Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm happy you're here. I realized recently that I never introduced myself in my videos, so I'm Jasmine, in case you don't know who I am. If you stumbled across this video, I'm happy you're here. Today, I'm going to be talking about Jesus, my favorite topic. Recently, I feel like God put on my heart to share some of the ways that I have grown my faith, because I feel like sometimes it's really easy to get lost. Like you want to get deeper and you want to have a deeper relationship with God, but you also don't know how to do that. And I feel like that is one of the hardest things to figure out on your own. And if you're not like involved in a church, or if you don't like have any guidance, I feel like it's really intimidating. So I decided that I was going to try to come up with some things that I feel like can make that process easier. And these are just things that I feel like have helped me in the past 2 years. My faith has grown so much in the past 2 years, like it's crazy. And I think a lot of it has to do with just my desire to grow. Once I started at City Life, and once I realized that my relationship wasn't quite where I wanted it to be with God, then I really kind of full force went into, once I realized where I was at and that I wasn't where I wanted to be, I had to try to figure out how to get there. And it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I'm going to give you guys some things. So number one for me was definitely getting involved in a church. And by getting involved, I mean like involved in serving, making the commitment to be there. At City Life, we have the 6-month pact that our pastor talks about regularly, and it is to be in church every day for 6 months and to see how your life will change. And I can look back and think to myself that the first 6 months, so much changed just by getting involved, and even just my own place. I'm kind of shy, I'm really introverted, and it took me a long time to find my place. But 6 months later, it was just so different. And so that's really a huge thing. If you don't have a church and you're not involved in a church, I really would recommend that you find one and try to get involved. We have connect groups at my church, and that is a big thing. When I first started going was to get involved in a connect group, and that was kind of the path that led me to community within my church, because I was so introverted and quiet that on Sundays I wasn't making friends, and I didn't there's pressure. The pressure to try to talk and get to know people was just so difficult. But when you get into a smaller group setting and you're kind of more one-on-one, it's easier. And I'm very thankful to the people that were at my church at the time that really kind of took me under their wing and made sure I felt welcome and made sure that I stayed involved, because without them, I really don't know that I would have. Another huge thing is an accountability partner. And obviously for me, that person is Hunter. And when it comes to me and Hunter holding each other accountable, we kind of go like this. Because when we first started dating, I felt like Hunter was a lot stronger in his faith than I was. And still sometimes I feel that way. But he pushed me, and even though I would get mad at him for it sometimes, I needed that. I needed somebody to say, hey, do these devotionals with me. Hey, don't just not comment on them. Don't just do a halfway job. Hey, why don't you do this with me? Hey, let's do this. And by having somebody to do it with that was a safe place, it not only encouraged me to continue to uphold my side, because if I didn't, not to say I would feel like I was letting somebody down, but we as a couple wanted to be able to grow together. And so to be able to do that, we each had to push each other. And throughout this time, we have had to continue to hold each other accountable to our devotionals and to being in the Word and just all kinds of things. So I think an accountability partner is really important. And that obviously doesn't have to be the person that you're dating. That can be your best friend. It can be whoever, but just somebody to talk to, somebody that's willing to just be there for you and guide you and push you to continue to grow. It's so, so, so important. My next thing is gonna be, if you don't feel like I say this, reading the Bible is hard, and you don't always know what to read. You don't always know where to start. You don't know how to go about getting in the Word. And that was me. I struggled so hard before, and you always feel like you're not doing it right. Like you feel like, oh, you're just going to sit in front of an open Bible and God's going to say, okay, go here and read this, and it's going to like blow your mind. And that's not always what happens. I mean, yes, sometimes it does happen. God speaks to you through the word, but it's not easy when you don't feel like you have direction. So for me, I loved devotional books, and I still do love devotional books. You can go buy a devotional book, or you can get, on the Bible app, they have devotionals on there. And when I started, of course, Hunter is the reason why I started all this, but when I started doing devotionals with him, and I started seeing what kind of devotionals were out there, and we would be doing these things together, then as time went on and I got more comfortable, I would pick out devotionals just for me to do. And that was a good way to get into the word and to have okay, first you're going to read this little devotional, and then you're going to go to this passage, and you're going to go to this passage, and you're going to go to this passage. And if you really put your heart into it, then you'll get something from it. Like, you're not just going to go through things. And if you're really trying to hear from God, then you're not just going to not get anything from these devotionals. And sometimes maybe you won't get as much as you thought you were going to be. Sometimes there have been devotionals that I'm like, that was kind of mediocre for me. I didn't love that one. But then there have been other devotionals where I'm like, ooh, this was amazing. So it kind of just depends. You have to play around with it. You have to find what's comfortable for you. In relation to that, for another thing that you can do if you feel called to do this, because this is something I feel called to do, is to read the whole Bible. And this is something me and Hunter have been doing together this year. And we are doing the Bible project on, I don't know if it's the YouVersion. It's the Bible app to me. I think it's the YouVersion Bible app. But it's the Bible project, and it's taken us from Genesis to Revelation. And we're doing it this year. And that is also, I feel really important if you want to know God. If you don't feel like you know his heart, and you don't feel like you know the Bible, there are so many stories I've come across, and I've had no clue. I've never heard those stories before. I did not grow up in church. So I wasn't those things weren't shown to me. And there's so many things. But more so than that, you learn God's heart for you and his character and just all of these just different things when you read the whole Bible. And even in chapters where it's not like Psalms, where you can go through and highlight and write out all these verses that can apply to your life, he will speak to you through all of the Bible. And you'll go through this just journey where you feel like you've learned so much about his heart and about his character. And I think that that's a big part of faith, because if you don't know God's heart for you, then you don't truly understand what he did for you and how he loves you and his grace and his forgiveness. You don't really understand those things until you understand his character and who he really is. And I feel the biggest thing for me to learn who God is, besides being in church listening to sermons, is to find him in the word. And I remember a really long time ago, I was still in high school probably at this time, but somebody was talking about their testimony, and somebody at one point had told them to go find themselves in the word, because everybody is different and everybody connects with God in different ways. And it's not the easiest thing. It's not so simple. People make it out like it's simple, and maybe for some people it is, but for me it was really hard. I was so lost because I hadn't been in church for so long. And even when I was in church, I don't really believe that my relationship with God was all that strong. I was just involved in church, and that's great. Be involved in church. You don't have to have the strongest relationship with God, because your relationship will grow if you're involved in church. But that sentiment of find yourself in the word was just to powerful to me. And I don't feel like I've ever truly experienced that until this year, and until reading the whole Bible. And I almost want to start over next year. Once I finish the Bible project, I almost want to start over and just do it again, because there's so much in it, and I feel accomplished. We're more than halfway through. I think we are in I just read Songs of Solomon, I think is where I was, but we're more than halfway through, and we're not going to finish by the time the year is up, but that doesn't matter because we did it. I've read more of the Bible this year than I have ever read in my life, and like I can account for that. And also it's giving me so much passion to be in the Word because I see what it can do. Like, I see what it can do for my life. It's taught me so much about prayer, like just all the things. I'm getting off topic, but being in the Word is not easy without guidance. And that's why I recommend devotional plans. That's why I recommend like the Bible app and just getting on there and looking at different devotionals and just doing them until you feel comfortable. And then as you start to get more comfortable, you'll start to get deeper. Another great thing is sermons. And for me, I listen to sermons from lots of different churches, but my home church is City Life, and just because I go to City Life doesn't mean I can't listen to Elevation sermons, or that doesn't mean I can't listen to Mercy Culture, or there's so much just goodness, and like people cover things differently, so just listen to the sermons. But one thing I fail at, and I have continued to fail at this year, is when I listen to a sermon, I just sit there and listen to it. I'm not taking notes. I'm not like really in active listening. I'm kind of just listening. And I feel like I would get more from the sermons that I did listen to, even at church, if I truly gave it my full attention and like sat down with a pen and paper and took notes. And I don't mean notes on my phone. Whenever I first started going to City Life, I took all my notes on my phone. And then when I first started listening to Elevation sermons, I would take all kinds of notes, but it would always be on my phone. And I just feel like your phone is distracting, first. And second of all, I think that there's something to be said for truly sitting down with just you and getting rid of, eliminating like all those external things and just you and God and like what He's trying to teach you and what He's trying to tell you, because that's what a sermon is for. So that's a big thing for me. I use the podcast app. I like to listen to all kinds of different churches on the podcast app. Sometimes I watch the YouTube videos, but I feel like when I do that, I get a little bit more distracted too. So that's another thing. If you don't have a home church, you can start there. Like you can start with listening to sermons from churches, and that can be how you find your church, or even there's not an Elevation around here, but I still like to listen to Elevation because I always get something from Elevation. But just make sure that if you are going to listen to a church, make sure that they're preaching the gospel. Because there's a lot of controversy nowadays with churches and pastors and the way that they preach. So just to make sure like you have enough discernment to know like this is what's truth, this is what the Bible says, this is the gospel. And then if should there be something that's not or that goes against that, like make sure you use your own discernment when it comes to what you listen to. Like don't just sit and listen to a sermon and let that be it, and you just like take every single thing that they say and you don't actually stop and think about it for yourself, because that's not the best way to go about doing it. So to kind of wrap this up, y'all, I know I'm a little all over the place, but I just feel like it's so important, one, to talk about Jesus, because Jesus is amazing and He's done so much for you and He loves you and you need to know that. But also, I remember that girl. Like, I remember being that girl that hadn't been involved in a church or at a church or gone to a church in 2 years. And I was, like, wrecked from the fact that I didn't have a relationship with God. And I had no clue. Like, I remember, I'm going to get emotional. I remember thinking to myself, why have you put this, what are you doing? Like, why have you put this on the back burner? Like, this should be the most important thing of your entire life. And you've gone 2 years and you don't pray. I didn't pray. Like, I wasn't in church. I wasn't tithing. Like, I didn't talk to God. Like, I was doing nothing. I was listening to worship music. That is just, that's a really hard part of life to go through. And I think a lot of people go through it, but I wish that I could have seen a video like this that would make me feel better, that everybody goes to this, but that here are some ways to get out of it, because you don't want to stay in that place. And I would just encourage all of you guys to remember that just because you're somewhere now doesn't mean you have to stay there, and you have the power to change it. And if you want a better relationship with God, one, give yourself grace because faith is hard. But two, if you want a better relationship with God, go after it because He wants a better relationship with you. Like, He is always in the waiting for you to come back to Him. And that is like one of the most amazing things, is that no matter what you do, He's waiting for you to come back. And I'm not trying to be too churchy, but in all actuality, like, this is important to me. And I think that this topic is a topic that should be talked about more than any other topic in the world. Like, if I can sit here and show you all these silly vlogs of me in nursing school, I can sit here and tell you about God and my faith because it's so important. And I just mean all of this to be an encouragement to you, that just because you are wherever you think you are doesn't mean you have to stay that way, and that, like, there are tools out there to help you develop that deeper relationship and get back to that place, because that's where I feel like your life changes. Like, life changes so much when you give it to God, and when you put everything else away and just look at Him. I was thinking the other day about, like, passion. My word for the years for 2020 is passion. And I've always said passionate pursuit of Christ. Like, that was a phrase that God gave me when He told me, I'm going to give you passion. But then I look at the other things in my life, and because I have set my eyes on Him and I'm passionately pursuing Him, I have so much more passion for all the other aspects because it flows. Like, it's flowed to everything else in my life because I set my eyes on Him and I ran after our relationship. And that I've never thought I'd be the type of person that would sit here and film a video and, like, talk openly about this, but that just shows how much I've grown, and the fact that, like, I think this is so important, and I'm so comfortable talking about this because I have grown, and, like, I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back for it because it's not easy, but I made it a priority, and I'm still gonna make it a priority. I'm gonna continue to make it a priority, and I think all of y'all should make it a priority. And I'm rambling, but anyways, I only mean this to be an encouragement to all of you. And yeah, thanks for watching. Stay tuned because there's a lot of life stuff. There's a lot of life stuff going on that I want to share with you guys. Yeah. Love you guys. Thanks for watching.